The courtroom was dead silent as she rose to her feet. No lawyer by her side, just a single USB drive in her hand. "Play it," she told the judge. A familiar voice filled the room, his voice ordering the cover-up. The Attorney General's smile froze, his eyes darting toward the cameras. Gasps, murmurs, the sharp crack of the gavel. Minutes later, in the hallway, he walked straight toward her. No security, no press, just a faint, tired smile. "You just saved people you'll never meet, including me. If you believe the truth can strip power of its weapons, comment respect." The smell of hot soup drifted through the small kitchen, warm yellow light spilling from the ceiling lamp onto a table cluttered with law books, and a calendar with important dates circled in red. Aaliyah Brooks, 28, her hair tied back, wearing a faded hoodie, stirred the soup while keeping her phone propped up her mother's face on the screen. "Make sure you're eating. You've lost weight," her mother reminded her. Aaliyah smiled faintly, nodded, but her eyes carried a tiredness she couldn't hide. She talked about her extra shifts at the library and hoping to save enough for her part-time law program. From the TV in the corner came the sound of a community appreciation ceremony hosted by Attorney General Jonathan Carlisle. On screen, he shook hands with local leaders, smiling brilliantly under the popping flashbulbs. Aaliyah glanced over, her hand tightening around the spoon, her expression momentarily stiffening. Her voice in narration cut in like a blade. "I used to think justice was for everyone, until the day I met him. The smell of soup, the golden light, the hum of the TV all seemed to fade away, leaving only one question hanging in the air. Who is he, and how will she face him?" On the TV screen, the ceremony played on in all its grandeur. The camera cut to the lavish hall, applause thundering under blinding lights. Jonathan Carlisle, in a tailored charcoal suit, stepped to the podium with the polished smile of a seasoned politician. His warm, deliberate voice carried across the room. "We will protect civil rights, especially for women, from any form of violation." The crowd erupted in cheers. The camera lingered as he leaned down to shake hands with his female assistant, his hand resting lower than necessary. Her smile faltered only for a second before she quickly recovered. Carlisle straightened, continuing his speech as if nothing had happened. Aaliyah's voice sliced back in. "He always knew how to make the whole room believe him, except me." The moment hung in the air before applause roared again, filling the void where the truth had been buried. Carlisle's eyes flicked toward the camera, confident he was in control of the story. But somewhere, someone had seen behind the polished facade. That someone was sitting in a small kitchen, watching it all. A few days later, night had fallen over the government building. The long hallway echoed with sparse sounds, setting the stage for a meeting unlike any other. Fluorescent lights hummed softly over the deserted floor. Aaliyah followed the call to Carlisle's office, her chest tight with equal parts anticipation and caution. Warm desk lights spilled across a folder he had laid out. At first, they discussed the community project, his tone steady, authoritative. Then, his words began to shift into murkier territory. "Do you live alone? A woman like you must get a lot of attention." He stood, walked toward her, brushing her wrist as he handed over a file, testing her reaction. Close up, the phone in her coat pocket, recording, its red light blinking. The room seemed to shrink. Every breath felt louder. She stayed composed, ended the meeting politely, and stepped quickly into the hallway. The cold neon lights made everything feel unfamiliar. Her hand gripped the phone, her heartbeat drowning out her footsteps. Outside, a fine rain began to fall. Aaliyah knew she had crossed the line, and the only question now was, with this recording, what would she do next? Less than a week later, a message from Carlisle appeared on her phone. "I have some confidential documents for you to see tonight. Top floor conference room." Attached was a photo of her from a recent community event, a reminder that he was always watching. The conference room overlooked a glittering skyline, but the air between them was heavy. He started with budget talk and planning, then dropped his voice. "You know, I could help you get much further if we understand each other." When he walked her to the door, his hand slid briefly to her waist, only a few seconds, but enough to make her spine lock. Later, in the women's restroom, An older coworker entered her tone grave. He's done that to at least 3 others. None of them are here anymore. The words landed like a hammer on the last pieces of trust she had left. Leaving the building, the night wind cut sharp, but it couldn't shake the feeling of being trapped in an invisible cage. One built from power and silence. The next morning, the main conference room was bright and full. Aaliyah stood before the projection screen, presenting her community project with a steady voice and clear eyes. Heads nodded, people took notes. A week later, the internal report came out. The project was identical, but the author's name belonged to one of Carlyle's trusted aides. No explanation, no apology. Soon after, HR called her in, citing performance review and canceling her quarterly bonus without reason. Her desk was in disarray, sticky notes, missing some files, gone. The atmosphere shifted. Coworkers avoided her gaze. Conversations died when she walked by. Aaliyah's face, the smile gone, eyes hollow, breath heavy. Carlyle wasn't just harassing her, he was using the system to suffocate anyone who dared stand against him. And Aaliyah realized this wasn't just a personal attack. It was a calculated punishment shielded by an entire network of power. The next morning, weak sunlight filtered through the frosted glass of the corner cafe, casting mottled shadows across the worn wooden table. Aaliyah sat by the window with Mia and community lawyer Daniels. The hiss of the espresso machine and the smell of fresh pastries couldn't cut through the heavy air between them. She recounted every detail of the night before, her voice low and deliberate. Mia squeezed her hand, but her eyes darted away, as if afraid she might get pulled into the same dangerous current. Daniels sat upright, scanning the room before leaning in. Carlyle can bury anyone's career. Think this through carefully. Aaliyah pulled out her phone and hit play on the recording. Static crackled. Carlyle's voice barely audible, nowhere near clear enough to hold up in court. Outside, a light rain pattered against the glass in a slow, steady rhythm. A community leader passing by paused, set a hand on her shoulder, and whispered, "Don't be foolish. Don't stir up something you can't control." The table seemed to freeze over. Aaliyah swallowed a sigh, flipped open her laptop, searching for a sliver of hope when an unfamiliar email from a government address popped up. Her heartbeat kicked up. Before she could click it, the screen went black, dead battery. Silence swallowed the moment whole, as if the world itself was trying to block her from a truth it wanted hidden. That night, her small apartment sat in darkness, lit only by the cold blue glow of the laptop screen. She plugged in the charger, sat motionless for a moment, then reopened the email she'd glimpsed that morning. Her chest tightened as she read an internal memo documenting Carlyle's closed-door meetings, including the night before, time-stamped to the exact minute she'd been in his office. A single damning line stood out. Meeting off record, no official entry. She took screenshots, saved them to a USB drive, each movement quick and precise, like she knew someone might be watching. Outside, the rain came harder, wind whistling through the cracks as her fingers flew over the keyboard. She scrolled to Claire Bennett's number, the investigative reporter who'd once taken down a politician live on air. Her hands trembled as she typed, "I have something you need to see." When the message ticked sent, a shiver ran up her spine. For the first time, inside the tangled web of power, she saw a narrow slit of light she might crawl through. And this time, she wasn't going to back down. Claire Bennett's office. The third floor of an aging building smelled of damp paper and strong coffee. The walls were plastered with photos and case maps from past scandals. A single desk lamp cast a warm circle of light across towering stacks of files, catching on the thin frames of Claire's glasses. Aaliyah placed the USB and the recording on the desk. Claire plugged in the drive, her eyes darting across the metadata. "Date time, here it is," she murmured. On Carlyle's public calendar, she found a neat 30-minute gap matching perfectly with Aaliyah's visit. She immediately called a former colleague of Carlyle's. On the other end, a man's voice shook. "He's dangerous. I can't help you. I'm sorry." The line went dead, leaving only the long, flat beep. Aaliyah sat frozen, the chill sinking into her skin. Claire looked up, eyes sharp as glass. "If I find who deleted this entry, we've got a case that could blow wide open." Outside, car horns echoed through the damp night air, as if announcing the battle had officially begun. And once you stepped into this fight, there was no way out. Late night at Aaliyah's apartment. In the small kitchen, the overhead light pooled golden over the table. Two papers lay side by side, a formal complaint and a press release Claire had drafted. Steam from the teapot curled upward, blurring her view. Aaliyah sat still, fingers tapping the table, weighing the future in her mind. She picked up her phone and called her mother. Her voice came through, shaky but firm. You can't let them silence you. If you stay quiet, someone else will suffer like you did. The words cut through the last threads of hesitation. Aaliyah took a deep breath, signed the complaint, attached the press release, and sent it to every relevant agency and a few major newspapers. The whoosh of the sent email was soft, but it echoed in the still room. Outside, wind whistled through the cracks, rain tapping like a war drum for the storm ahead. She stepped onto the balcony, looking out over the lit windows of the city, each light a person, a story, and now hers was out of her hands, facing the world. Within hours, the story spread like wildfire. News outlets, TV networks, and social media flooded with Aaliyah's name and Carlisle's. Public pressure forced Carlisle into the spotlight. The press conference. The city felt strung tight before the storm. The room overflowed with reporters. Flashbulbs popped like gunfire as Carlisle took the podium's sleek black suit, face cold and composed. Two of the state's top lawyers flanked him like stone walls. Carlisle gripped the microphone, voice ringing with confidence. These accusations are pure fabrication, born from petty political motives. I will be suing for defamation. The crowd buzzed, camera lenses swung toward him. At home, Aaliyah sat rigid in front of the TV, hands gripping the chair arms until her knuckles whitened. On screen, Carlisle's thin smile seemed to send her a private warning. Within the hour, social media brimmed with smear pieces. Fame hunter, bitter failure, out for revenge. Cruel comments poured down like rain. A knock sounded at her door. She opened it, empty hallway. On the floor, a plain brown envelope with no return address. Inside, a photo of her and her mother at the market and a scrawled message in black ink. Stop, or else. Her chest constricted, breath catching. In that moment, Aaliyah knew Carlisle would do anything to keep the truth buried. And this storm had only just begun. The days after, tension thickened until it was hard to breathe. A court summons arrived, dragging the shadow war into full public view. The cold white lights of the courtroom reflected off rows of TV cameras, all aimed at Carlisle. He sat at the defense table, calm as if this were just another meeting. His legal team produced carefully altered emails, painting Aaliyah as the aggressor, someone scheming to climb the ladder at any cost. A key witness once ready to testify for her changed his story on the stand, voice flat as he insisted he'd never seen Carlisle act inappropriately. Aaliyah sat there, heart pounding, each word landing like a blade on her reputation. When court recessed, Carlisle left the courthouse, still wearing the mask of a man unshaken. That night, he dined in a private room with politicians and top donors. A man poured him wine, smiling faintly. Don't worry, we'll handle the rest. Their laughter mingled with the clink of glasses, a toast to power and protection. As the screen faded to black, it was clear. The scales of justice were tipping hard in Carlisle's favor. And unless something broke the pattern, Aaliyah would be crushed beneath the weight of the system. Aaliyah's apartment was wrapped in darkness. The curtains were drawn tight, and the only light came from the faint glow of her phone, casting tension across her face. The screen kept lighting up with new messages. Keep your mouth shut. We know where you live. Some came with candid photos of her from behind, proof someone was following her. Her fingers trembled as she made a call. It was the only witness still willing to testify. His voice cracked through the speaker. I'm sorry, I can't. I have a family. I have to back out. The long, cold beep after the hang-up echoed in the room. She set the phone down on the table, her gaze vacant. Tears slipped slowly onto her clenched hands. The ticking of the wall clock grew painfully loud in the silence, every second pressing her deeper into despair, fear, loneliness, and betrayal, weaving an invisible net that closed in around her. The phone rang again, shattering the stillness. Claire's urgent voice came through. Aaliyah, I think I just found something Carlisle really doesn't want anyone to see. And in that instant, in the dead of night, a thin blade of light cut through the darkness. The apartment was still pitch black, save for the steady clatter of keys. Aaliyah sat before her laptop, deleting files from the USB one by one like she was cutting away her last chance. A text from her mother lit the screen. Don't risk it anymore. You can't win. Another from Claire. Maybe we should stop. Each word landed like the final shovelfuls of dirt on a buried hope. A knock sounded at the door. She hesitated, then rose to answer it. Standing there was an older man, eyes deep and tired. He introduced himself as a retired judge and another of Carlisle's victims. From a worn leather case, he produced a small recorder. One click, and Carlisle's voice came through, crystal clear. Wipe the Brooks file. No one finds that evidence. Eliminate the risk. Aaliyah froze, then lifted her eyes. For the first time in weeks, they burned with light. It wasn't much, but it was enough to ignite her will again. She invited him in, shut the door, and for the first time, winning didn't feel impossible. The days that followed, she rarely left her books or case files. She knew that if she wanted to turn that recording into a decisive blow, she had to master every clause, every loophole in the law. Her refuge was the public library. Late at night, the library was silent. Fluorescent light spilled across a long table buried under law books, files, and pages of red ink notes. Rain tapped steadily against the tall windows like the beat of a countdown. Claire set down a thick folder. I can hire you the best lawyer there is. Aaliyah shook her head, voice firm. No? I'm representing myself? I won't let anyone twist my story again. Claire started to argue, but stopped. Aaliyah's eyes weren't trembling anymore. They blazed with resolve. She turned back to her books, underlining key statutes, scribbling strategy notes. Between study sessions, she stood in the library's restroom, practicing her opening statement in the mirror. Her voice wavered at first, but with each repetition, it grew steadier, sharper. Her reflection seemed taller, stronger. When she closed the last book, she whispered to herself, "They're not taking my voice away again." Outside, the rain still fell. But in her mind, the sky was already clearing. This wasn't just a legal decision. It was a declaration of war on the system itself. In the days leading up to trial, the press swarmed with coverage. Aaliyah's name splashed across front pages. Some headlines championed her, others tore her down. The morning of the hearing, every step toward the courthouse felt like carrying the weight of countless untold stories. Inside, the courtroom was packed. The press benches buzzed, TV cameras panning between the stern-faced judge and the defendant. Carlisle sat poised in a tailored suit, a thin, defiant smile playing at his lips. Aaliyah took the witness stand. The light fell across her face, showing tension but no trace of fear. She played the recording. Carlisle's voice unmistakable, issuing instructions no one could misinterpret. The room stirred with whispers. Then she produced printed internal emails, complete with metadata proving an appointment had been erased. Carlisle sat back, arms folded, his smile unshaken, until she read aloud the sworn statement from her new witness, the retired judge, detailing the file wipe order. The smile vanished. He snapped, blurting out a denial that directly contradicted his earlier testimony. The entire room froze. The judge's gavel came down hard. Court will recess to review this new evidence, the judge announced. The heavy doors closed, but the weight of that moment lingered in the air. Carlisle no longer looked untouchable. News of the new testimony and the shocking evidence spilled beyond the courtroom walls within hours. Public and media pressure made it impossible for the higher authorities to look the other way. The federal prosecutor's office glowed under the desk lamps. Fresh case files were spread across the table pages, covered in dense text and stamped with red seals. Investigators flipped through each sheet, marking lines with yellow highlighter. Across the table, a former associate of Carlisle sat with trembling hands as he signed his statement. He ordered me to delete every record of his private meetings, especially with women working in the office. The testimony hit like a hammer. The story spread fast. Aaliyah got a call from Claire. We have more than just one case. At least 3 other women are ready to testify. On the TV in Aaliyah's living room, the evening news banner scrolled across the screen. More victims of Carlisle come forward. Aaliyah sat in silence, eyes fixed on the images. Relief mingled with a racing heartbeat. She knew this was no longer just her personal fight. It had become a movement, forcing the truth into the light. Amid the rising wave of support, new leads began to surface. An unmarked envelope arrived at Claire's newsroom, holding something that could change everything. Late that night, the blue glow of Claire's laptop lit her tense face. A knock on the door made her look up. A thick envelope was placed on the desk, no sender listed. Inside was a small hard drive. Claire plugged it in and opened the only folder. Inside, an internal recording between Carlisle and his legal counsel. Wipe everything related to Brooks and make sure no one ever finds it. Remove the risk. Carlisle's voice was unmistakable and undeniable. Claire leaned back in her chair, eyes wide. Aaliyah sat beside her, fists clenched, breath quick. This wasn't just evidence. It was the final nail sealing Carlisle's escape route shut. The moment the late-night news aired the recording, the cameras caught Carlisle's legal team, their faces drained of color, eyes darting in unease. For the first time, the public saw a Carlisle stripped of control. In that moment, the tide officially turned. The weight of public outrage and this new evidence pushed the case into its decisive stage. Just days later, the court reconvened and all eyes turned to Carlisle once again. The courtroom was silent now. None of the earlier murmurs and chatter. Carlisle sat upright, fingers interlocked, but sweat dotted his forehead. The judge read the ruling. This court orders a criminal investigation into Mr. Jonathan Carlisle. The position of Attorney General is hereby suspended, effective immediately. The gavel's strike sounded like the closing of a chapter. From the press row, camera flashes burst in rapid succession. Court officers stepped forward, escorting Carlisle out. He turned his head, eyes dark, brimming with resentment. Aaliyah stood in the aisle, her breathing slowing. When she stepped outside, dozens of microphones and lenses swung toward her. Her voice trembled slightly, but it was steady enough to carry. The truth will always find its way to the light, not just for me, but for everyone who hasn't yet been able to speak. Viewers across the country watched the moment, a woman standing firm against a power once thought untouchable. 1 year later, morning sunlight poured into the community classroom. Pens scratched across paper, pages rustled. Aaliyah stood at the front, a whiteboard behind her marked with large letters. Know your rights. She spoke about legal protections, how to collect evidence safely, and the importance of documenting every suspicious interaction. On the desk sat a thick binder labeled Victim Advocacy Program, a program she had founded herself. Her face was different now, her eyes bright, her voice firm, her smile warm. At the end of class, applause broke out. As the students filed out, the door opened. Claire walked in, setting a fresh case file on the table. We've got another one. Aaliyah looked down, thoughtful for a moment, then nodded. The camera slowly pulled back, freezing on the image of the two women facing each other, the file between them, light spilling across the table as if opening the first page of a new chapter. The journey wasn't over. But this time, Aaliyah was ready from the very start. If you believe the truth isn't just to be heard, but to be fought for, hit like, comment, respect for those brave enough to speak, and subscribe so these stories keep being told. Reminding us that justice always begins with the courage of one person.